Hello, I'm Todd Bailey. Welcome to Something Scavenging and Stinking, my exhibition of books and items by and about Thomas Wolfe. The title for this exhibit comes from a letter Wolfe wrote to a friend saying, "I hate the hocus pocus of professional book collecting. There's something scavenging and stinking about it." Despite his protestations, I believe Wolfe would appreciate being admired and collected down to this day. So please, won't you take a copy of the exhibition catalog and join me for a tour? The first item in the collection, number 1, is The Crisis in the Industry. It's Wolfe's student essay in philosophy, which won the Wolfe Prize. The Wolfe Prize consists in having the essay published by the university in an edition of 200 copies. Most of the known copies today are in institutional libraries where collections have been donated. This is one of the few remaining copies. Curiously, in the late 70s, 2 facsimile editions of The Crisis in Industry were made. One in Raleigh, we call the bootleg edition because it was not authorized by the Wolfe estate. The other one, published in Winston-Salem, was authorized by the Wolfe estate, and they flank the original in this exhibit. Let's continue over here. This case contains books that were published during Wolfe's lifetime by Scribners, beginning with An Angel on the Porch in Scribner magazine in August of 29. 2 business cards, one that was actually for his mother's boarding house. The other one is a humorous creation by the Wolfe Memorial. 2 first editions, Look Homeward Angel in dust jackets. The first one has a first state dust jacket with Wolfe's photo on the back. The second one has a second state dust jacket with some blurbs from reviews after the novel came out. Of Time in the River, a signed copy. Nice copy of From Death to Morning. The first UK edition of From Death to Morning, and a nice first edition of The Story of a Novel. These were the books published by Scribners. On the second and third shelves are signed and illustrated copies. The middle copy of Time in the River, signed by Mr. Wolfe for an accountant at Scribners, was sold by Donald G. Drapekin when he auctioned his collection of modern literature at Christie's. The distinctive part about his collection is the custom-made clamshell boxes, which were individually designed to mimic the dust jacket on the book within. Further down, number 15 is the first UK edition of Look Homeward Angel, and number 47's the first UK edition of Time in the River. And interestingly, the 4 books on the bottom that look very much like the first edition were later publications by different presses, the Sunset Press, Garden City Press, and others. The interesting thing is, in a 912-page book, the weight of the paper influences the size of the book. The first 2 you'll notice are medium size. The third one had thinner paper and is thinner, and the fourth one had heavier paper, so it's heavier. One of the more interesting things I learned in preparing the catalog for this exhibit is the concept of what's called a cancel leaf. In The Story of a Novel, the first UK edition, which has a beautiful edition here, and of course one that's not been as well taken care of, what a cancel type leaf is they cut out a sheet and then paste a replacement in where the stub is. This is often done to make repairs after a book has an error. Nobody would do that anymore and be so meticulous. But I think in this case what happened was Scribner sent sheets from the American edition to Heinemann in London, and the Heinemann firm cut out the title page and inserted their own title page. So this is a cancel title leaf. And if you look very carefully in the selvage, you can see the stub that it was pasted onto, which I think is rather interesting as a bibliophile. This cabinet contains the posthumous novels published by Harper and Brothers with Ed Aswell as editor after Wolfe changed editors. The three main ones are The Web and the Rock, You Can't Go Home Again, The Hills Beyond. The wainscoting that you see on the outside with the posters were done by my friends Mike and Amber Lynn, and the posters are actual photographs of my dust jackets. Below and around are all the various later editions and printings of these titles, right down to the most current, You Can't Go Home Again in paperback, and The Hills Beyond from LSU Press, and The Web and the Rock. One of the more interesting things in preparing the exhibition catalog, I cataloged everything in the collection in the order that it's supposed to be in, or tried to. And I found what's called the salesman's dummy for The Web and the Rock. I didn't even know I had it, but it's chapter 1 from The Web and the Rock. And also next to it are the pad-bound galleys of a chapter from The Web and the Rock that salesmen would use out in the field to get people to place their orders. Numbers 78 and 79 and 94 and 95, the jacket art is by a young illustrator, Edward Gorey, who went on to be famous for his macabre illustrations. The covers for You Can't Go Home Again don't look as much like Gorey, but the Web and the Rock design is very Gorey-esque. This is what I'm calling the Yancey County table. The photographs are of Thomas Wolfe in front of the old courthouse in Burnsville in August of 1937, where he was subpoenaed to testify at a murder trial, stemming from events he witnessed when he came through earlier that year in May. I've tried diligently to find a transcript of his testimony, which I haven't been able to locate, but item 601 is a photocopy of the record on appeal to the North Carolina Supreme Court from the state archives. Pages illustrated are a narration of Wolfe's testimony. When they did the record on appeal, they would have had a transcript which would have questions and answers. They glued those answers together to make a narration of his testimony. For example, they would have said, state your name, Tom Wolfe, and that becomes, my name is Tom Wolfe. But it's authentic enough to give you a taste of what the testimony was like. Another favorite is page 30 of The Story of a Novel, where Wolfe is talking about his colleagues, Wolfe and Hemingway and Fitzgerald and others, who had to go to Paris to find inspiration to write. And he disavowed that notion, writing, "The place to work. Yes, the place to work was Paris. It was Spain. It was Italy and Capri and Majorca. But great God, it was also Keokuk and Portland, Maine, and Denver, Colorado, and Yancey County, North Carolina, and wherever we might be, if work was there within us at the time." In number 110, The Return of the Prodigal, part of The Hills Beyond, Wolfe tells the story of coming through Burnsville in May of '37 and witnessing a shooting. It begins, "The county seat of Zebulon is a little town." And while Wolfe was in Yancey County, he went up to Locust Creek on the South Toe River and interviewed his great uncle, John Westall. He talked to the old man about the old man's fighting in the Battle of Chickamauga, and from that he came up with a short story, Chickamauga, which is number 277. They couldn't place it in a trade publication, so it went to the Yale Review, which paid less, but Wolfe got enough to buy a raincoat, which he called his Yale Review raincoat. This item is not my collection, it's on loan from Deborah Borland. This corner of the table has later editions of Look Homeward Angel and of Time in the River that wouldn't fit in the principal cabinet. Guests have particularly enjoyed seeing the Armed Services editions of Look Homeward Angel condensed for wartime reading. These are the facsimile copies of the first edition. This version more correctly reproduces the original dust jacket than this one, which is too purpley and is not a good reproduction. The top shelf has various editions of Look Homeward Angel illustrated by Douglas Gorsland. The Gorsland artwork has been the subject of an exhibition with a catalog, and it's also been the subject of a monograph for the Thomas Wolfe Society by Aldo Meja. The table continues with books listed according to Carol Johnston's biography, a note on experts, gentlemen of the press, one of which is inscribed by William Targ, the year of wandering in many lands and cities with a facsimile of Wolfe's travel notes, a special reproduction of a prologue to America, which has become a nice collectible, a piece of letterhead from the Asheville Citizen-Times that Wolfe signed when he returned in May of '37. And then down through the poetic works where people have taken Wolfe's prose and condensed it into verse to illustrate the poetic nature of his writing. From left to right on the bottom table at the end of this U section are books that I have listed as AA section and the B section in Carol Johnston's bibliography. It begins mostly with collections and anthologies, and then it blends into books that have some mention of Wolfe in them. For example, the correspondence of F. Scott Fitzgerald might seem not to fit, but there'd be a Wolfe letter in there that first appeared. This shelf, with the addition of number 315 loaned by David Strange, allows me to exhibit every one of the early keepsakes listed by Johnston. Johnston defines a keepsake as a republication of something by Wolfe in a limited edition that is not for sale. I love the early keepsakes. They're printed on nice paper and very nicely done. After years, I got a copy of What is Man, only to get a second copy. This one is inscribed for Belinda Jelliff by George Preston, Wolfe's first bibliographer. Have both versions of America and to Rupert Brooke, but the pièce de résistance is God's Lonely Man. It's a keepsake that was published by the San Jose State College Laboratory Press in 1947. It's a beautiful book with beautiful printing. The colophon may be a little snotty, but it says, "This book, like many books produced for the pleasure of the maker, was a long time a-making. The text was set and most of the press work completed in 1945. The title page was set and printed early in 1947, and the binding was completed in May of this year. The type used is Goudy's Deepdene with accents in Bernard's Modern Roman. This edition consists of 30 copies only on ivory-laid Strathmore text. Of the 30 copies, I only know of one. It's in the Lilly Library in Bloomington, Indiana. This is the only other copy I know. Wolfians like Aldo P. Magi would kill to get this and may have never seen it before." This item is the woman's first place trophy for the 1989 Thomas Wolfe 5K at the Thomas Wolfe Memorial. It was won and given to me by my friend Flo Carlisle. The keepsakes continue right on up to early publications by the Thomas Wolfe Society. Thomas Wolfe was very creative. In the 1930s, when he would visit his classmate Lacey Meredith and his wife Thora at their apartment in New York City, he used this flower vase as a highball glass. I enjoy giving guests the opportunity to drink after Mr. Wolfe. It's the closest thing to kissing Mr. Wolfe you'll ever come to. One of my friends at the opening said he felt as if he had sipped from the Holy Grail. This section contains what I have of the magazines that are cataloged in number C of the Johnston bibliography. They go from Scribner's, which kept Thomas Wolfe going in his early years, between the first two books until he proved himself and became even more famous. He would later publish in the American Mercury, the Book Buyer, the New Republic, the New Yorker, Red Book, and other magazines of the day. And then some of the articles here are either by other people or posthumously published. The artwork has a studio print of a Carl Van Vechten shot of Thomas Wolfe. This item is a linoleum print, which the lady that did it either didn't know how to reverse the image or didn't realize it would be reversed when it was printed, because the porch of the Wolfe house appears on the right, not on the left as it should appear in the other piece of artwork. This one, number 591, is a favorite of people. The artist calls it Thomas Wolfe as Look Homeward Angel. It's a illustration or a drawing of Wolfe that is made by writing words and lines from Look Homeward Angel. Everybody knows about the Broadway play adapted by Katie Frings from Look Homeward Angel, but not everybody knows that there was a Broadway show called Angel. It was done off-Broadway. Unfortunately, when it came to Broadway, it folded after just 2 or 3 performances. This is a record of songs from that musical. Fred Gwynne of Munster's fame played Wolfe's father, W.O. Wolfe. This chess set is Thomas Wolfe versus F. Scott Fitzgerald, done by an outfit called Styx, I believe in Ohio. It features Wolfe, his mistress Aline, as king and queen against Fitzgerald, and of course Zelda. One of the bishops is a flapper. Wolfe's bishops are mom and dad, and then the pawns are copies of the books of both authors. The drawer where you keep the pieces is where I frequently store my thesis on Wolfe and Fitzgerald, causing one of my friends to call it the Ark of the Thesis. This is my thesis done at UNCA on Thomas Wolfe and F. Scott Fitzgerald. The second shelf is later publications, the complete short stories, restorations by scholars, Good Child's River, Lost Boy, Starwick episodes, The Party at Jack's. On the bottom shelf, we have an early student publication of Thomas Wolfe, The Drammer, and his college annual. Pages from that are reproduced here. Wolfe wrote plays for the Playmakers Theater and performed in them his senior year, third night. Here's a picture of Wolfe as editor of the Tar Heel, and then his senior entry in the yearbook. This item is an original letter that Wolfe wrote to a bookseller in 1930 from Switzerland. The text is reproduced in transcript, and he mentions having seen F. Scott Fitzgerald in Switzerland. The last item is technically manuscript. It is the original typescript for his short story Fame the Poet that was sent to the American Mercury. It has the corrections and editing notes of the editor at Mercury, who ended it, I believe, on page 9. There was more to that story, but they cut it off. So yet another illustration of editing Thomas Wolfe. And finally, courtesy of David Strange, who's loaned it, is the edition of the American Mercury that carried the published version of Fame the Poet. This wall contains every issue of the Thomas Wolfe Review, which began as the Thomas Wolfe newsletter, and the reports to the annual reports to the membership of the Wolfe Society, most recently known as the Proceedings. It begins with issue 1, number 1 of the Thomas Wolfe newsletter, which was Hugh Holman's copy, and it goes down through the most recently published copies. I asked my friend Kevin Parks to cut quarter round with finishing nails to make little shelves to hold these. And being Kevin, he decided they would fall off that narrow shelf, and he custom designed these metal shelves, which are powder coated finishing, to aid the display. The bottom row is books on tape of Wolfe's principal novels. It takes a lot of tapes to hold a Wolfe novel. Number 612 is an original slate tile from the Wolfe house. When it burnt, they were discarding debris, and I salvaged this. My friend Sharon Trammell drew a copy of Old Kentucky Home on it. And then I have a certificate for sponsoring a replacement shingle on the restoration. The new shingles are nice, but they're not as nice as the original slate tile. If you like, there's more in the basement. Let's go see it. Welcome to the bargain basement. This room is illustrated with my copy of the Laterio Calipi portfolio. My copy is number 4 in the series. Unfortunately, it's a broken set. I only have 16 of the 25 illustrations. David Strange has number 7, and his is complete. He used it to do a monograph for the Thomas Wolfe Society a few years ago that gave everybody a good viewing of what the portfolio looked like. Even though this is incomplete, it gives you a good viewing of an original. Okay. This shelf is the pop culture shelf. There's t-shirts, illustrated authors, the card game American Authors. Wolfe is number 10. Titles of his novels reproduced on matchbook covers, and the crossword puzzle of American Authors with the Thomas Wolfe crossword puzzle in it. Down below, principally, you have the collection of published editors. Letters to Mother, the redo by UNC Press, letters to Max Perkins, correspondence of Thomas Wolfe and Homer Andrew Watt. His bibliographer, Carol Johnston, noted the 2 printings of Wolfe at Washington Square and the correspondence. She did not notice that the second printing, or the, I think this is the Oxford University Press edition, also came in a box set, and it is slightly shorter than the NYU edition. Collected letters to everybody, letters to his agent, letters to his mistress, letters to his friend Robert Reynolds, letters to his teacher, Margaret Roberts, variant editions, galley proofs for the now edition of letters, Aldo's letters in the South Carolina Review, and then over here are the various plays. Wolfe began, of course, as a frustrated playwright and then turned to literature. This is a presentation copy of John Terry's edition of Wolfe's letters to his mother. It's got a lengthy inscription for Kitty and Clayton Hoagland, and it comes with the advance copy notice from the publisher, as well as the photograph of Wolfe's mother. I didn't have room to lay out all the more recent keepsakes at Art and Johnston, so I had to illustrate them in files in this bucket. It begins with The Strange Case of Thomas Wolfe, published for the Chicago Literary Club. It includes Dwayne Schneider's exhibition of his books in 1977. It goes through various later keepsakes, bookmark, a limited edition of Ray Bradbury's Forever in the Earth, a radio dramatization where he has Thomas Wolfe going to Mars. Facsimiles of letters done for meetings through the North Carolina Society imprints. Three Guys' book on how I got hooked on Thomas Wolfe. Many other things, including Aldo Magi's checklist and bibliographies. My own keepsake, a dossier on Thomas Wolfe in 1992 with facsimiles of letters between Thomas Wolfe and Isabel Logan, who went on to become Andy Logan of New Yorker fame. Deb Borland's maternal ancestry on the Westalls. John Phillipson's A Room with a View. More letters. Aldo Magi's A Trip Through Vermont with reminiscences and thoughts. Many of Jan Hensley's keepsakes, including Saving Dixieland. The top shelf contains what I'm calling memoir. It begins with Jonathan Daniels' October Recollections, goes through several different people's memoirs, ending with Pat Conroy's A Love Letter to Thomas Wolfe. He was a huge Wolfe fan, of course, published the letter in a journal. There was a limited edition as well as a manuscript edition. This is copy D of the manuscript edition, and I've got photocopies of the Barry Moser, I think it's a lithograph of Conroy and Wolfe. This is number 3 of 25. And then it has an original page of Conroy's manuscript on legal pad. This is page number 4, and they're all included in that book. Most of the rest of the second and first page here are the biographies, beginning with Hayden Norwood's story about Thomas Wolfe's mother, then the earliest biography of Wolfe, all the way down through the years. There's galley proofs from Now's edition of letters. Of a biography. There is a galley proof of Now's Thomas Wolfe biography. Finally, the uncorrected proof copy of Now's edition. Includes the major and the minor, the Window of Memory by Richard Kennedy, Andrew Turnbull's edition, Richard Walzer's Thomas Wolfe Undergraduate, David Herbert Donald's Pulitzer Prize winning biography, Ted Mitchell's illustrated and written biography, Joanne Marshall Malden, Thomas Wolfe When to the Atrocities Begin, and then finally a new children's biography that's just out this year. In this corner I had to get a tall, skinny shelf to put things in because I just ran out of room to lay things flat. The first two shelves here are the various academic studies, which I've lumped under criticism and studies. The third shelf is more recent magazines, periodicals, and journals, mostly academic articles. And the very bottom shelf, I'm calling it reference. It's checklists, the notebooks, bibliographies, illustrated picture editions, and the like. Up on top, I have prominently displayed my copy of Liddell Payne's monograph on Thomas Wolfe. David Strange and Maynard Reeves almost got in a fight for a copy of that in 1992 at a bookstore in Chapel Hill. This Saturday review has a review of Katie Fring's Broadway play, Look Homeward Angel. This is Olive Tilford Dargan's copy. It has her name on the mailing label. In this issue of the Sewanee Review, Louis Rubin has an article paying homage to Thomas Wolfe, and it's inscribed to Pat Conroy, who had his own Wolfe period. Inside is a 2-page typed letter to Pat Conroy from Louis Rubin on Algonquin book letterhead, telling him various things, and then he ends with a story. It's something like the guy who went into a Catholic church into the confessional booth. "Father, I've been with a woman for the past 3 nights in a row." "Did you engage in sex with this woman?" "Yes." "On each of these nights?" "Yes, I did." "Was she a married woman, my son?" "Yes, we've been married for 51 years. Pause. "Well, my son, you know that isn't really a sin." "Oh, I realize that, Father. As a matter of fact, I'm not even a Catholic, but I just had to tell somebody." This is the end of the exhibit. I'm at the end of my rope. I'm out of space. I've used the exhibition under construction to say pardon our mess. I have laid down here what should be upstairs, the section E from Johnston's bibliography, Putative First Appearances. These are what's left in that section. I have a lot more from it, but they're in other areas, for example, biography or memoir. And then finally, here's all the annual publications of the Thomas Wolfe Society that weren't included upstairs in keepsakes. I'll try to do a better job of laying them out or organizing, but the Wolfe Society members will be familiar with these and won't miss not having them set out as much as enjoying some of the other special things that are arranged for everybody's consumption. Thank you for taking the time to tour my exhibition. You're invited to sign the guest book and leave your comments on your way out the door. What you've seen here represents 25 years of collecting books and items by and about Thomas Wolfe. What I wanted to do was to visually illustrate here in his hometown the extent of his influence and the attention that's been paid to him. People forget that when Thomas Wolfe was writing in the 30s, he was very popular. He was like a movie star. And even though that popularity has ebbed, I think that the exhibition shows he still has continuing appeal to people. This exhibit coincides with a meeting of the Thomas Wolfe Society here in Nashville this month, and it's also in anticipation of the movie released next month, Genius, based on A. Scott Berg's biography of Wolfe's editor, Maxwell Perkins. Wolfe features prominently in that story, and we're hoping that the movie will raise his stock a little bit. So I'm hoping this exhibition has whetted your appetite for Thomas Wolfe and the movie, that you'll read him and enjoy the film.